Hi, I'm David, and welcome back to COC. Today we're going to talk about archaeological discoveries every Christian should know. Over the centuries, people have questioned whether or not we can trust the Bible. How do we know that the people talked about in the Bible are real, and the stories talked about in the Bible actually happened? Well, there are several ways, but one of the main ways is archaeological discoveries. These discoveries whisper across time. The cities and rulers mentioned in Scripture are found on tablets and walls, and the prayers and prophecies written thousands of years ago have been preserved on parchment and papyrus. Every discovery reminds us that Christianity doesn't rest on blind faith. It stands upon a solid foundation of evidence. So let's take a journey through time, and let's examine some of the most extraordinary discoveries that can help strengthen the faith of every believer. What are archaeological discoveries every Christian should know? Well, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but here are some of the most important ones. I'm going to divide them into two categories: manuscripts and objects. Let's look at them both individually. First, manuscripts. There are actually a lot of these I could mention, but I'm only going to showcase the most important ones. And I'm not going to mention any of the major biblical codices, things like the Codex Sinaiticus or the Codex Vaticanus, because while they're considered manuscripts, they came around a little bit later. The ones I want to talk about in this video are a lot older because they're all dated from before the time of Jesus or within the first couple of hundred years after the time of Jesus. So what are they? First up are the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls are around 900 scrolls that were discovered in the mid-20th century in a group of caves in the West Bank. Some of them were written as early as 250 BC, and they contain copies or portions of copies of almost every single book in the Old Testament. Historians and scholars have been able to use them to test the accuracy and reliability of modern-day Old Testaments. And get this, there are some differences between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Old Testament we have today. But 95% of the differences are punctuation or spelling errors. 95%. And even with the other 5% of differences, none of the differences change the meaning of the text or have any significant theological impact whatsoever. Next up are the Ketef Hinnom Scrolls. The Ketef Hinnom Scrolls are two tiny amulets that were found in burial caves in Israel in 1979. They date back to the 7th century BC, and they are inscribed with a priestly blessing from Numbers chapter 6. The Lord bless you and keep you. They're actually older than the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they also help show how the accuracy and the reliability of the Bible has been preserved through the ages. Next up is the Chester Beatty Papyri. The Chester Beatty Papyri were discovered in Egypt in the 1930s, and they're named after the very wealthy businessman who bought them, Chester Beatty. They contain large sections of the Old Testament and the New Testament, and are dated to the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. The reason they're significant is because they are among the oldest copies of many New Testament books, and are, yet again, another proof that the accuracy and reliability of the Bible has been faithfully preserved over the centuries. Next up is the Oxyrhynchus Papyri, another discovery in Egypt. The Oxyrhynchus Papyri was a huge discovery of over 400,000 early manuscripts in a massive trash landfill in the late 1800s. The manuscripts date all the way back to the 2nd century and contain thousands of ancient writings, including portions of the New Testament. Several major manuscripts were discovered, including the famous P66 and P75, but I want to showcase another one of them, which brings me to the next discovery. P52, more commonly known as the St. John Fragment. This was part of the Oxyrhynchus Papyri, and it is the oldest known manuscript of the New Testament. It was discovered in 1934, and it's been dated to as early as the year 125. It's about the size of a credit card, and it contains a few verses from John chapter 18 when Jesus is being questioned by Pontius Pilate. It is hugely significant for a couple of major reasons. First, since it's been dated to as early as the year 125, its discovery in Egypt proves that the Gospel of John was written and being circulated very early, within a generation of the Apostle John himself. Second, since it's been dated to as early as the year 125, it debunks a lot of critics' claims that the books of the New Testament weren't written until hundreds of years after the time of Jesus. This proves it was much earlier. Next, let's take a look at objects. Now that we've looked at things that corroborate the text of the Bible, let's look at some of the things that corroborate some of the people and events the text of the Bible talks about. First up is the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III. Shalmaneser III was king of the Assyrian Empire, and he's mentioned in the book of 2 Kings, where the Bible tells us that he attacked the northern kingdom of Israel. Several of Israel's kings had been paying tribute to King Shalmaneser so that he wouldn't attack them. And one of them was King Jehu, who is mentioned on this obelisk. This obelisk was discovered in 1846, and it's significant because it mentions one of Israel's kings by name, just like he's mentioned in the Bible. Next up is the Caiaphas ossuary. Caiaphas was the Jewish high priest who presided over Jesus' trial, and he is mentioned in the Gospels of Matthew and John and the book of Acts. His remains were discovered in an ossuary in Israel in 1990. The inscriptions on the ossuary match the name and time period described in the Gospels. This is significant because it helps confirm the historical accuracy of the New Testament's account of Jewish leadership during Jesus' ministry and his later arrest and trial. Next up is the Cyrus cylinder. Cyrus was king of the Persian Empire, and he's mentioned over 30 times in the Bible, including in the books of 2 Chronicles, Ezra, and Daniel, where the Bible tells us that he allowed the Jewish people to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. The land of Israel had been taken over by this time, and the Jews had been living in exile. King Cyrus let some of them return to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple, and in 1879, this ancient document was discovered. We call it the Cyrus cylinder, and it talks about displaced people returning to their homeland, exactly as the Bible describes it. Next up is Hezekiah's tunnel. This was a massive engineering project built by King Hezekiah to divert water from one part of Jerusalem to another part. It's talked about in the books of 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. It was discovered in 1867, and it's 1,750 feet long. Next up is the House of David inscription, also known as the Tel Dan Stele. The House of David inscription is one of only 4 known inscriptions from the Second Iron Age that contains the word Israel. It describes a battle that's talked about in the book of 2 Kings. It was discovered in Israel in 1993, and it describes how King Hazael killed 2 Israelite kings from the House of David. Next up are the Lachish letters. This is a collection of ancient letters found in Israel in 1935. They were written by Jewish soldiers as King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian army were getting ready to attack Judah. They were likely military dispatches, and the soldiers appear scared because the letters kind of read like last text messages before disaster strikes. King Nebuchadnezzar and his army eventually did invade, and the battle that took place is described in the book of Jeremiah. Next up is the Megiddo mosaic. This is one of the more recent ones because it was discovered in Israel in 2005. It was found on the floor of an ancient Christian prayer hall, and it includes an inscription dedicating the building to God Jesus Christ. The reason this is significant is because a lot of critics claim that the belief that Jesus is God didn't come around until hundreds of years after the time of Jesus. This mosaic is dated to around the year 230, showing that Christians believed that Jesus is God much earlier, even before the faith was even legalized in the Roman Empire. Next up is the Merneptah Stele. This is a monument that was discovered in Egypt in 1896. It is dated to around 1208 BC, and it includes the earliest known reference to Israel outside the Bible. The reason this is significant is because it shows that there was a distinct people called Israel who lived in the area at the time. This helps make the case for modern Jews who say that they have a historic claim to the land. Next up is the Moabite stone. This is also called the Mesha Stele. The Moabites were one of the arch enemies of ancient Israel, and this describes a battle between King Mesha of the Moabites and Israel. It was discovered in 1868, and is talked about in the book of 2 Kings. It mentions King David and the divine name Yahweh, making it one of the earliest known references to Israel's God outside the Bible. Next up is the Nazareth inscription. This was discovered in 1878, and it's an imperial decree that made it illegal to disturb graves or move dead bodies after they've been buried. It's dated to the 1st century, right after the time of Jesus. And the Bible tells us that after Jesus rose from the dead and his tomb was empty, one of the explanations his critics gave was that his disciples had stolen his body. How interesting that not long after this rumor started, it became illegal to move dead bodies. Next up is the Pontius Pilate inscription. This was discovered in Israel in 1961. It bears the name of the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, who presided over Jesus' trial and ordered his crucifixion. Before this discovery, critics had questioned whether Pontius Pilate was an actual historical figure. This stone inscription firmly confirms his role and title as the prefect of Judea, validating the gospel accounts and connecting the events of Jesus' passion to verifiable history. Next up is the Pool of Bethesda. This is located near the Sheep Gate in Jerusalem, and it's the place where Jesus healed a paralyzed man in John chapter 5. Its discovery in 1888 perfectly matches John's description and confirms that even small details in Scripture accurately reflect real locations. Next up is the Pool of Siloam. In John chapter 9, the Bible tells that Jesus visited this pool and healed a poor man there who was born blind. The Pool of Siloam was a mikveh, where Jewish people would wash and clean up before they could go into the temple to worship. In 2004, workers repairing a sewage pipe in the old city of Jerusalem discovered the pool, exactly where the New Testament says it was. Next up is Sennacherib's Prism, also known as the Taylor Prism. This was discovered near the ancient city of Nineveh in modern-day Iraq in 1830. It describes King Sennacherib's attack on Jerusalem during the reign of King Hezekiah, described in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. King Sennacherib actually captured several cities in Judah, but didn't capture Jerusalem. Hezekiah tried to bribe Sennacherib by giving him a large tribute, but when that didn't work, God sent an angel that killed 185,000 troops in Sennacherib's army. Needless to say, King Sennacherib backed off. So there's a list of 19 archaeological discoveries every Christian should know. And I know that these are only very brief descriptions, which don't do them justice, but hopefully it whets your appetite to look into them more. We're making archaeological discoveries all the time that validate people and stories mentioned in the Bible. Here's what Dr. Clifford Wilson, the former director of the Australian Institute of Archaeology, has to say. I know of no finding in archaeology that's properly confirmed, which is in opposition to the Scriptures. The Bible is the most accurate history textbook the world has ever seen. Each one of these discoveries, every artifact unearthed, every inscription translated, every manuscript preserved, confirms what the Bible has always declared: that God has worked through real people, in real time, in real places. Please notice that none of these discoveries are proof of our faith, but they are very, very, very strong evidence for it. So the next time a critic says there's no proof for the Bible, remember these 19 witnesses. Hope you enjoy this, because that's all I've got for now. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay devoted, stay faithful, and stay convinced of Christianity.